At this point, folks, I think we need to prepare and plan for something that not very many people realize might be possible. What am I talking about? I think it would behoove everyone who follows one rental at a time to assume we have zero Fed rate cuts next year. I'm not necessarily saying we're going to go higher next year, but let's just assume zero rate cuts. I am hearing too many people talk about, date the rate and do this and do that. And you're probably overpaying, making bad assumptions. So if you're buying a small business, if you're getting a loan on a house or doing this or doing that, I am asking you to assume there are no rate cuts next year. We're going to have this conversation with Taylor from Life Goal Investments. Man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I tend to agree with you. And what we've seen throughout this Fed rate hike cycle is the Fed has said, this is what we're going to do. And they've stuck to it. And the market has consistently said, you're not going to do that much. You're going to do less. And that's exactly what the market continues to say right now. So the Fed is essentially saying right now, hey, no more rate hikes coming. Or I'm sorry, they're saying we could see one, possibly two more rate hikes this year. The market's saying you're not going to do any. And then the Fed is saying we're going to stay on pause throughout 2024. And the market's saying five rate cuts is what's
next year
currently priced in by 2024, the end in December. 5 rate cuts. So I'm totally with you. I don't foresee. I mean, that would cause what would happen to? I'll ask you this: what would have to happen in order for the Fed to be willing to cut rates 5 times, which is what the market is currently priced in as of today?
That's 125 basis points.
Correct.
We would probably have to see unemployment at 6%, certainly 5.5%. We would probably have to have negative GDP of 1.5 or 2. I mean, it would have to be a dramatic change. And by the way, we have to have CPI. We'd have to have CPI under 1. I mean, it would have to be bad. I mean, all three of those would probably be true.
Again, it has to be some combination of those things because the Fed doesn't cut rates when times are good, right? I mean, there's no reason to cut rates when times are good. We're trying to slow down inflation still and all of that. So here's the other side of the coin. I talked about this today on my own Instagram. I talked about the fact that there's 2 things predominantly that drive stock prices. One are company earnings, just the fundamentals of the company. And the second thing is the Fed. And especially right now when the Fed's, projected to do all of these different things, et cetera. So we're talking about the Fed cutting interest rates 5 times. We just talked about what would cause them to do that, a pretty dire situation from an economic backdrop. So what's the market currently pricing in from an earnings perspective? The market's currently pricing in 12.2% earnings growth for 2024.
Wait.
That's exactly the response you should have. Exactly the response you should have. Write that ship for me, would you?
Yeah, that I can't tie all of that. That doesn't tie together. One of those things has to be wrong, right? I mean, I don't get it.
Correct. Yeah. 12.2% earnings growth says the economy is humming. It says all ships are firing, all cylinders are firing, things are moving in the right direction. It does not say the Fed's cut 5 times on the other side because that paints a totally bleak economic scenario. But currently there are, as of this morning, 12.2% is the average earnings growth of S&P 500 next year by the analysts, and 5 interest rate cuts is what's currently being priced in.
Yeah. So folks, if you don't understand what Taylor is basically highlighting, this is what I've taken for this. So if we do the rate cuts first, basically, how do you get rate cuts? Again, they don't cut when the economy's good, right? The economy's bad, which typically means we're spending less money, either personally, businesses, or government, or all 3.
Correct.
Then there's earnings growth of 12%, which means companies are selling a lot and making a lot of money, and we're going forward. So one of those 2 things will be right, and one of those 2 things will likely be wrong. I look at that, I don't get it. What am I missing?
That's the conclusion of my video is simultaneously, you could have one of these 2 things be right. Simultaneously, these 2 things cannot play out in harmony because it doesn't make sense. It paints 2 different economic backdrops.
Well, again, I'm just playing with this in real time. So the other thing that I'm just thinking about, this just came to me. So the last inflation reading headline was 3.2, right?
Correct.
Let's just assume automatically that inflation prints 1.8 in February, right?
Okay.
Housing rolls over, oil comes down off the boil, whatever. I'm just making stuff up.
Yep. So you're down 1.4
So
from where it is now.
yeah, so we're at 1.8 and the Fed's at 5.25. Let's assume they don't raise from here.
Yep.
Historically speaking, that is wildly restrictive.
Correct.
So maybe, I'm just playing with stuff in real time. Maybe the market is actually saying inflation is going to roll over faster than expected. And what the Fed will do is cut a little to be less restrictive. So, I mean, that's the only way I can tie those things together. That feels like a reach, but
In inflation to come off that much, there's got to be less spending going on in the economy
oh,
for inflation to come down that much, and that has to result on
in
company earnings. And
something.
so
Yeah.
when you look at earnings, also I can give you one further point of context. Earnings expectation again are up 12.2%. 5.1% is expected the increase in revenue. So top line is expected to be up 5%. So again, some of the earnings growth is coming under the surface from cuts, but nonetheless, 5% growth of revenue on the top line is what's anticipated. I don't see how you could get that dramatic of a fall off in inflation with, again, people spending more and revenue being up 5% across the board.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that. It doesn't feel I can't tie those things together and
It
feel good
seems like
about it.
it seems like stocks right now are pricing in, and I said this in the video too, having your cake and eating it too.
Right.
Like you're saying the economy is going to be great, so we're going to get the benefit from strong earnings, but simultaneously you're going to get the benefit from what would be perceived as a negative economic backdrop with rate cuts.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. I know we're near the tail end of earnings seasons. I didn't prepare you for this, so if you don't know, totally fine. But how is earnings and are we still in an earnings recession? Is this the third quarter in a row?
Yeah, we are. So earnings are down about 5.5%. Now, this is celebrated right now because the expectation was
It's
being
less
down
than expected.
7.2%. So we're only down 5%. No, but what's funny is the market's obviously reeling a little bit right now. The market's been all over the place today, but the last 2 weeks, you've started to feel a little bit of this change in sentiment, a little bit of change in winds, if you will. And really, there hasn't been any real changes from a kind of fundamental standpoint, right? Banks got downgraded, but that was kind of already known, although they didn't downgrade them. That it was already known. The U.S. debt situation that caused our globe or our country's debt, the U.S. Treasury to get downgraded. The underlying issues there were already there. So I don't think there's anything that's massively changed, but I think what the market's coming around to is like, again, kind of the rosy colored glasses that we talked about here is you can't have all of these things simultaneously being a tailwind to stocks. Valuations are stretched, and at some point, some reality has to be checked into this, and maybe we're getting some of that now.
Yeah, one of my conversations on Sunday with another millionaire, we actually looked at the internals, and there's been a clear rotation the last week or so out of tech, out of communications, into energy, into other parts of the market. So I think
Yep.
there's a clear rotation going on.
No doubt. It's what has not worked this year is starting to work, and what's worked really well is starting to sell off a little bit. Now there hasn't been Microsoft is down 10%, something like that. Apple started to roll over just a little bit. And those are the two biggies. Those are the two most important because they're the largest constituents of the S&P 500. So be aware of that. But yeah, it's not like everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Don't let me paint that picture. But it does seem like you're getting this rotation from NASDAQ-oriented stocks into Dow Jones-oriented stocks. Again, a rotation from growth-oriented to value-oriented stuff that hasn't worked this year.
A lot of stuff going on, folks. 2024. Please do me a favor. If you watch my channel, plan for rates, no rate cuts. If you get them, all gravy. Let's not get over our skis. Taylor, where can people find you?
That's really good advice, by the way. Hey, you can find me at Life Goal Investments, on both Instagram and on TikTok.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.